Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, we're going to be talking about how the mystery of the Clawson's Rest cabin gets even sadder thanks to some new discoveries, because it looks like Rockstar's original plans and intentions with this cabin was to be able to save the people inside. So in case you guys don't know, Clawson's Rest is one of the cabins you can visit in Red Dead Redemption 2. It's in the Grizzlies West region of the Ambarino territory, and it's basically northeast of Cattail Pond, but west of the Dakota River. And upon arriving, it actually looks like a fairly relatively quaint and peaceful little shack. There's just a little trail that leads up to it. And outside the cabin, there's a handful of interesting things. Like right off the bat, you kind of get the vibe that whoever lived here was like a hunter or a skinner or a poacher, because there's skulls of animals, there's skunk pelts, there seems to be fur and hide of other animals outside the house itself. There's also a little area outside of the cabin that consists of wooden boxes, logs, and I think what looks like this drying rack back in 1899 for like hides and furs, and even an outhouse as well. Now, just because I was curious to see if anyone was stuck on the inside, the answer is no. No one is stuck on the inside. There's nothing interesting inside of the outhouse itself. It just looks like whoever lived here was a hunter, and they were proud of the things they hunted, and they put them up on their cabin. And as far as what goes on outside of the cabin, there's not a ton. There's a couple of plants that you can pick as well, which might actually be important a little bit later on as we refresh through this story. So the plants that you can pick up are wintergreen berry, and you can also pick up some oregano as well. So both things that you could like eat on their own, that would be like a food source or something like that. So that's going to, again, be important a little bit later on as we actually go inside of the cabin itself. And the only way to get inside of the cabin is to kick down the door. You can't just open it. You actually have to kick down the entire thing. So right off the bat, you know that there's something a little bit suspicious going on here potentially. And as you guys know, or if you need a quick refresher, upon entering the cabin, you'll immediately notice that there's something wrong here. Right off the bat, the quick thing that you'll notice is the body of two young children. We'll talk about that as we go on a little bit more. But other than that, there is just a lot of weirdness going on in this cabin. Sort of starting over in the kitchen area, you guys can see just how many pots and pans and open cans of food that there actually is here. And Arthur can take some open snake oil and some ground coffee as well. And you'll also notice that there's a bunch of like cleavers and big cooking knives that look to have like blood or the remains of what's inside of cans all around them. To me, that looks like blood, not necessarily the remains of some beans, but I'll let you guys make that judge for yourself. It's just in a weird spot next to an empty basket. There's not a lot that's making sense here. And then there's two cigarette cards on the window that you can actually grab. One is for Captain Jack Page, which is a pretty cool one. He is Champions of the World. And the other one is for Edwin A. Rowe. He is another champion of the world. So if you go here alone, you'll get two cigarette cards, which is quite a nice little find. Now, outside of that, again, transitioning to sort of the rest of the house, I was looking for things that were suspicious. The ceiling and the structure looks to be sort of rotting away, but it doesn't scream anything like something malfunctioned. Like, for example, looking at the stove, you guys can see that the exhaust of the stove goes out of the house, so it's not like they would have died via poisoning or anything like that. And then we should focus our attention on the boys themselves. It looks like they were reading this comic, Otis Miller and the Arabian Prince. And then the most damning thing of all can be found in the drawer, which is Letter to Glenn and Eddie from Mama, which is a letter from a mother promising her sons that she will be home soon. And the letter itself says this: Glenn and Eddie, I've gone to track down those men and get our money back. The door's locked and the windows are boarded shut. Promise me you won't answer to nobody who comes calling, even if you think you know them. There's enough food and water for 4 days or more, but I should be home by tomorrow night. At the latest, practice your reading and writing for me. All my love, Mama X. So there's a couple of things here that are interesting, sort of breaking down the letter. It seems like this poor family was robbed by a group of men or outlaws. We know this wasn't the Vanderlyn gang, but They were obviously already in a bad situation, getting their money robbed. They were locked inside of their own house, and the windows were boarded up as well. And they were told not to answer to anybody, even if they thought they knew them. So this would be interesting. You tell two young boys not to answer the door for anyone other than their mom. What if someone like the sheriff knocked on their door and asked if anyone was home or they needed help? Would they have responded or replied to that? It kind of in a sad way makes you wonder the sort of what ifs of this situation. And they had enough food and water for 4 days or more. So we clearly know that it was longer than that based off of what occurred here. And then she says, practice your reading and writing. Now, I'm thinking the outhouse is outside. You guys just locked me in this cabin. Are we just like supposed to use the restroom in here? That seems a little bit gross and weird to me, but we're going to go with it because it's kind of an emergency situation. So I don't know what the time frame is between how long it's been since Arthur discovers them and how long they have actually been dead. So on the surface level, it just looks like these kids starved. But there's a lot of weird things going on here with like the blood and the cleavers. Did one of the kids get desperate, maybe turn to cannibalism? You guys can see there, one of them is like lying in the bed, sort of facing the wall. The other is on the floor, sort of resting on the bed itself. So I think the obvious answer here is that they starved. But I think there's sort of a deeper story that we might not have uncovered yet. Now, here's where things get interesting because there were some files found in the game suggesting not only could the boys have been saved, but you were also supposed to lead them to the sheriff. So I'm going to show you guys these 3 lines of code on the screen. The first was to ask the children to leave the shack. The second set of instructions was take the children to Valentine. And the third set of instructions was take the children to the sheriff. So it looks like all in all, this was a cut mission from the game where it actually had the ability to save the children. And we know Rockstar loves honor situations so much, so I could see this being the perfect honor situation. So instead of them being dead right off the bat, what I would imagine would Arthur would knock on the door and probably end up hearing voices on the inside. Likely the children either saying, go away, or we've run out of food and need your help. And then Arthur would likely be presented with an opportunity to either kick down the door, save the children, or walk away, which would probably earn him bad honor. Now, this would also trigger probably a really cool change that you could see, like if you came back as John Marston or a couple of days later as Arthur, and you would either see the kids passed away, which I guess is not cool, obviously. It would have been cool that something like that had been dynamic, like a dynamic event where your choices would impact the game. But regardless, assuming you did the good thing here, you would ultimately take them to Valentine and then take them to the sheriff, where you would assume earn good honor, and maybe the sheriff would be able to take care of the kids until their mother came back or did not come back. And then again, that could trigger another dynamic event where if you return to the sheriff a couple of days later, or as John Marston, maybe those kids are now adults, they find you and they repay you maybe for what Arthur ended up doing, which would essentially be saving their life. So just kind of something to think about right here. It looks like this was a cut mission or side quest from the game, and it makes it even that much more sad because Rockstar cut out the ability for them to be saved, which would have been so cool. So I don't know if we'll ever see something like this added in RDR2 because the story had already been set, and by the time you get to the cabin, they're already dead. But this would have been, in my opinion, way better if we had at least had the option to potentially save them and bring them to the Valentine Sheriff. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. To you, does this make the story even sadder? Does it make it that much more uncomfortable if you were to visit this place? Let me know what you guys are thinking in those comments down below. I would love to hear from you guys down there. If you guys did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new. You want to stay up to date on all the latest GTA and Red Dead Redemption videos that I'm doing here on my channel. And be sure to ring that notification bell as well. Sometimes YouTube just doesn't work, and if you ring that bell, you'll always be guaranteed to be notified when new videos arrive. But of course, as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.